Hello again. It's been a while. I've been relying on Zoom to make my videos. It's been a lot of time in front of that screen. But we've come to the end of the spring 2021 semester. We've got one more class, the independent readings course on James. And I have written something to try to summarize his vision. This is a post to Up at Dawn called Bullseye. What is the living center of William James's vision? That's the question we'll end our James Independent Readings course on. My very senior student and I, congrats to you, graduate, on your latest degree. He's already got a law degree and now he's got a philosophy degree. In the spirit of James, it's important to stress we're ending the course but not the inquiry. Nothing has concluded that we may conclude in regard to it. That was central to James's vision, right up to his terminal breath, not long after he'd published those words in A Pluralistic Mystic, and after he'd set Henry Adams straight on thermodynamics and what it has to do, not much, with our capacities for delight. In short, the last expiring pulsation of the universe's life might be, I am so happy and perfect that I can stand it no longer. That's what James wrote to Adams in the summer of 1910, shortly before he died. Robert Richardson, James's biographer and the biographer of Emerson and Thoreau and others, rightly effuses over this magnificent outburst, the last stand of William James for the spirit of man. What can one say about the philosophical bravado, the cosmic effrontery, the sheer panache of this ailing philosopher with one foot in the grave, taking down the second law of thermodynamics? It is a scene fit to compare to the death of Socrates, the matchless incandescent spirit of the man. A will to believe in the universally instructive force of direct personal experience is part of the vision that James shares with Emerson. The point of any pen, he said at the Emerson centenary event, can be an epitome of reality. The commonest person's act, if genuinely actuated, can lay hold on eternity. James and Emerson took everyone's experience seriously. Richardson begins first we read, then we write, Emerson on the creative process, with Emerson's arrestingly emboldening statement of encouragement to young scholars. The first sentence of Ralph Waldo Emerson's that reached me, Richardson writes, still jolts me every time I run into it. Meek young men, he wrote in The American Scholar, grow up in libraries, believing it their duty to accept the views which Cicero, which Locke, which Bacon have given, forgetful that Cicero, Locke, and Bacon were only young men in libraries when they wrote those books. James applauded the sentiment. We each possess a unique and original relation to the universe, though so many of us sadly neglect to own it. Richardson spoke in a place that I've linked to on the blog post of James and Emerson as possessed of similar spiritual yearnings. And here he was in a video that I have posted from YouTube. And I was there too. If you click on the link under the YouTube video or on the blog post, it'll take you to the discussion after the lecture when I exchanged a few words, and others did, with Richardson. But here he was at the James Centenary this time, in Chicorowa in 2010. And the question that Richardson posed on James's behalf for all of us was, will you or will you not have it so? Will you say yes to life? Will you affirm your agency and get on with doing your bit to ameliorate the human condition? James finally decided to do that, late in his 20s. A commitment to hope. The thing with feathers is definitely on target, too. Avian imagery is big in James. with all our conscious and instinctive flights and perchings, and with the gulls skimming down at the Amazon, etc. This from a letter that James wrote as a young man pre-crisis in his 20s. He hadn't figured himself out yet, but he was already dispensing sage advice to his friends, this to his friend young Tom Ward. He said, "Remember when old December's darkness is everywhere about you, that the world is really in every minutest point as full of life as in the most joyous morning you ever lived through. The sun is wanging down, and the waves are dancing, and the gulls are skimming down at the mouth of the Amazon, for instance, as freshly as in the first morning of creation. And the hour is just as fit as any hour that ever was for a new gospel of cheer to be preached. I am sure that one can, by merely thinking of these matters of fact, limit the power of one's evil moods over one's way of looking at the cosmos." Birds also symbolize poetry for James, with its valiant attempt to supplement our inadequate volley of new vocables with songs that transcend words. The volley of new vocables is a quote from the Varieties of Religious Experience. Comes shortly after James says, "Philosophy lives in words, but truth and fact well up into our lives in ways that exceed verbal formulation." And here, if I can reach the text that has the full quote without knocking everything over, which I have done before. It's from my book, and it's the beginning of the introduction, the introductory chapter, and the full quote is this: "Philosophy lives in words, but truth and fact well up into our lives in ways that exceed verbal formulation. There is in the living act of perception always something that glimmers and twinkles and will not be caught, and for which reflection comes too late. No one knows this as well as the philosopher, or the honest one. He must fire his volley of new vocables out of his conceptual shotgun, for his profession condemns him to this industry. But he secretly knows the hollowness and irrelevancy. In the religious sphere, in particular, belief that formulas are true can never wholly take the place of personal experience." That's one epigraph to the chapter, the introductory chapter, "The Glimmer and Twinkle of Jamesian Transcendence." And the other one, worth mentioning here, I think, is from Peter Ackroyd's novel, The Plato Papers, a prophecy, wherein he proposed to define transcendence, slippery term always, by breaking it into segments, trans-end dance, and defining it as the ability to move beyond the end, otherwise called the dance of death. Pretty good definition. Well, another letter, decades later than the one about the gulls at the Amazon, expresses another central theme in James, his awareness of the tension between words and experiences, and how words can often screen us from the directness and the immediacy of that experience. He said in 1892, "It would be an awful universe if everything could be converted into words, words, words." And a resolve to be as healthy-minded as temperament and circumstance allow is near the center ring of James's aim. So what then is dead center, the ultimate pragmatic, pluralist, radical empiricist bullseye for William James? Well, I think it must be pretty close to what he said was Henri Bergson's sympathy, the heart of life and hope. He explored that in On a Certain Blindness in Human Beings and in A Pluralistic Universe, where he says, "Place yourself similarly at the center of a man's philosophic vision, and you understand at once all the different things it makes him write or say." Here's the full quote: "When you have broken the reality into concepts, you never can reconstruct it in its wholeness. Out of no amount of discreteness can you manufacture the concrete. But place yourself at a bound, or d'emblée, as Monsieur Bergson says, inside of the living, moving, active thickness of the real, and all the abstractions and distinctions are given into your hand, you can now make the intellectualist substitutions to your heart's content. Install yourself in phenomenal movement, for example, and velocity, succession, dates, positions, and innumerable other things are given you in the bargain. But with only an abstract succession of dates and positions, you can never patch up movement itself. It slips through their intervals and is lost. So it is with every concrete thing, however complicated. Our intellectual handling of it is a retrospective patchwork, a post-mortem dissection, and can follow any order we find most expedient. We can make the thing seem self-contradictory whenever we wish to, but place yourself at the point of view of the thing's interior doing, and all these back-looking and conflicting conceptions lie harmoniously in your hand. Get at the expanding center of a human character, the élan vital of a man, as Bergson calls it, by living sympathy, and at a stroke you see how it makes those who see it from without interpret it in such diverse ways. It is something that breaks into both honesty and dishonesty, courage and cowardice, stupidity and insight at the touch of varying circumstances. And you feel exactly why and how it does this, and never seek to identify it stably with any of these single abstractions. Only your intellectualist does that. And you now also feel why he must do it to the end. Place yourself similarly at the center of a man's philosophic vision, and you understand at once all the different things it makes him write or say. But keep outside. Use your post-mortem method. Try to build up the philosophy out of the single phrases, taking first one and then another, and seeking to make them fit. And of course you fail. And this is the way a lot of people do philosophy these days. You crawl over the thing like a myopic ant over a building, tumbling into every microscopic crack or fissure, finding nothing but inconsistencies, and never suspecting that a center exists. I hope that some of the philosophers in this audience may occasionally have had something different from this intellectualist type of criticism applied to their own works. What really exists is not things made, but things in the making. Once made, they're dead, and an infinite number of alternative conceptual decompositions can be used in defining them. But put yourself in the making by a single stroke of intuitive sympathy with the thing, and the whole range of possible decompositions coming at once into your possession, you are no longer troubled with the question which of them is the more absolutely true. Reality falls in passing into conceptual analysis. It mounts in living its own undivided life. It buds and burgeons, changes and creates. Once adopt the movement of this life in any given instance, and you know what Bergson calls the devenir real, by which the thing evolves and grows. Philosophy should seek this kind of living understanding of the movement of reality, not follow science in vainly patching together fragments of its dead results. That from a pluralistic universe, and that's it. Drop the excessive post-mortem conceptual analysis and the dead external way, which is our native blindness to one another's springs of delight. Try and place yourself at another's angle of vision. Catch the movement of reality. Return to life. And the music can commence again and again, the music of life, the music of delight, happiness. And then you can soar. And that's why I ended this book with Emily Dickinson's poem. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And I can show you the image of a soaring gull right there. Hope, near the center of James's vision, hope and sympathy. And other things too. I don't want to be reductive about this. I've actually got some bonus content, which I'm going to let you listen to. I made this in the audio version of this post. But one of the things is from Will to Believe, and the other is just one more snippet of poetry from the inimitable Ms. Dickinson. So give a listen. if it will cooperate. It's not going to cooperate. My audio. Darn it. Well, the best laid plans. I'm not going to waste time re-editing this. I'll just tell you that the quote I have in mind from Will to Believe is when James says that our errors are not such solemn things that we should fear to risk them. All right? In every life, errors will creep in and will be made, and that's perfectly fine. But here, I can give you the quote more accurately than that. Bear with me. That's it. Our errors are surely not such awfully solemn things in a world where we are so certain to incur them. In spite of all our caution, a certain lightness of heart seems healthier than this excessive nervousness on their behalf. At any rate, it seems the fittest thing for the empiricist philosopher. Right? And with that attitude, recognizing that we will make mistakes, but that we need to not fear to make them. We just need to learn from them. I think we're even closer to the center of his vision, and I wanted to show you the image that I link to that statement from Will to Believe. It's James with his daughter. And every parent knows that mistakes are inevitable. You learn from them, or you try. Do your best. You certainly shouldn't fear to try to raise your children, knowing full well that you'll make errors, but carry on. Now, the poem that I had in mind was Emily Dickinson's "The Brain is Wider Than the Sky." Maybe I can quickly call that up too. Right. The brain is wider than the sky. Because it makes an important point, in my opinion, about cosmic philosophy. Right? Cosmic philosophy that some people look at the night sky, for instance, and they feel very small and very insignificant. But not Ms. Dickinson, I think, and not William James. Right? And so, okay, looking for the poem itself and not analyses of the poem. Right? And it's suddenly hard to find. But let's look for it. And the point is that with wide horizons, with commitment to growth and learning from all life's rich experiences and the possibilities that it brings, we can dare to risk error. The brain is wider than the sky, for put them side by side, the one the other will contain, with ease, and you beside. For the brain is deeper than the sea, for hold them blue to blue, the one the other will absorb, as sponges buckets do. The brain is just the weight of God, for heft them pound for pound, and they will differ, if they do, as syllable from sound. All right, then. I think that's close enough to the center of his vision for now, but of course, the inquiry continues. Talk to you later.